All right, guys, so in section 1.6, we talked about relations, and in section 1.7, we're going to talk about a special type of relation, which is functions. You're going to hear this word a ton throughout the rest of your math career. Super important that you know what it means. Okay, but first of all, as a review, what is a relation? A relation is just a set of ordered pairs, okay, which contain inputs and outputs. Okay, so this is what we talked about in section 1.6. All this is basically saying is that a relation is just a bunch of points. Okay, you got some x's and you got some y's for each of those x's. Okay, but more specifically, a type of relation is called a function. You're gonna hear this word a ton through like the rest of your math career, like I said. A function is a special kind of relation in which each input has exactly one output. Okay, a function is a special kind of relation in which each input has exactly one output. We're going to learn how to identify functions versus things that are relations but not functions in a second. There's a bunch of different tests we could have, but all you need to know right now is a function is a special type of relation. Okay, a couple other key vocab words for you. Domain. What is a domain? The domain is the collection of all input values of a function. A domain is anything you can plug in, anything you're legally allowed to plug in, and it's usually the x values of a function. Okay. In comparison, what is the range? The range is all the collection of all output values of a function. It's usually written as y. Okay. Domain and range are opposite. When you see the word domain, I want you to think x values. When you see the word range, and I'm even going to change the color here. When you see the word range, I want you to think y. It's just that simple. Domain means x, range means y. Okay, the three criteria in which you must state the domain and range. One of the most common things I'm going to ask you to do is I just want you to state the domain and range of a function that I give you. Okay, the first thing I need is I need you to use something called set notation. Okay. A little bit new here, but what set notation is all it is just all the numbers are enclosed in curly brackets. Okay, we're gonna get better at drawing these. It's not super easy to draw it on the electronic version of this, but all you're doing is when you use set notation, you're using curly brackets. Okay, when you list the domain and range, it's super important that you list your numbers in order from smallest to largest. Okay. Your domain and range should just be a bunch of numbers. List these numbers from smallest to largest. Okay, and then also on top of that, it's important that you do not repeat any values in your notation. Okay, so when you list the domain and range, it's got to have curly brackets around it. Your numbers are going to go from smallest to largest, and you don't repeat any of the numbers within those curly brackets. Okay, so we're going to start off by playing a game, and the game is called Is It a Function? You just say yes or no. Okay, and what they're giving us right now is an input-output table. And based on this input-output table, we have to identify, is it a function or is it not a function? Okay, my favorite way to identify if something's a function, if they give me an input-output table, is I'm gonna do something called the birthday test. What is the birthday test? Okay, here's what you need to remember for the birthday test. Your inputs, everything on the left side of the table. We'll call this your friends. It's a bunch of different people. The left-hand column is your friends, and then the right-hand column are the birthdays. Okay, so here's how you tell if something is a function or not. Think of your left-hand column here as just 4 different friends that you have. And then your right-hand column is a list of birthdays. Okay, so what this is saying right now is that your friend number 1 has a birthday on the 2nd. Okay, that makes perfect sense. Okay, there's nothing wrong with that. Person number 1 can have a birthday on the 2nd. Okay, person number 2 has a birthday on the 4th. That is still perfectly okay. Person number 3 also has a birthday on the 4th. Okay, That is completely okay. It is definitely okay for two different people to have the same birthday. Even though that these guys share the same number, that is completely legal. And then person number 4 has a birthday on the 5th. Okay, because this scenario is possible that each of these people has their own birthday, yes, it is a function. Okay, but now let's just go ahead and compare it to example B. And it might be a spoiler here. Switch to orange. So once again, your left-hand column is your friends. Your right-hand column is their birthdays. So what this is saying right now is that person number 1 has a birthday on the 5th. Okay, so far we're good. But then we see person number 1 again, and it says that they have another birthday on the 7th. Okay, so we ask ourselves, does that make any sense? Can one person have 2 birthdays? No, that's not possible. It's impossible for one person to have 2 different outputs. It's impossible for one input to have 2 different outputs. So because that doesn't make any sense, we say this is no, this is not a function. If all you remember is that the left-hand column is your friends and the right-hand column is your birthdays, perform that test and you'll be able to tell if something's a function or not. So no, this is not a function. Okay, let's go back to that first example. Yes, the first example was a function, and after you identify it as a function, all you have to do is identify the domain and the range. So remember, what is domain? Domain is the inputs, usually written as x. So if I ask you to list the domain, all I want you to do is I want you to list all of the numbers in the x column, in the input column. And when we list them, there's 2 things. It's got to be in set notation, and it's got to be in numerical order. So set notation means I'm going to have a curly bracket, and you guys are going to get better at drawing these, but that is a left curly bracket. And all I'm going to do is I'm just going to list these numbers on the left in chronological order. So there's a 1, there's a 2, there's a 3, and there's a 4. Those are all of my possible inputs, okay? That is my domain of the function. It's those 4 numbers, so I close off the curly bracket. Okay, for range, I'll switch the color here. Let's go with this green. Range is the exact opposite. Range is the outputs, or the y values. So once again, when I list my range, it's got to be in curly brackets as well. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to list all of the numbers in my output column. Okay, so the first number I see chronologically is the number 2. The second number I see is 4. And remember that final rule. Remember, whenever I'm writing the domain and the range, I can't repeat the number. So even though I see the number 4 written twice, I'm not going to write it a second time. I just go to my next number, which is number 5. And this is my entire range, 2, 4, and 5. Once again, domain is x, range is y. Domain is input, range is output. If it is not a function, don't worry about listing the domain and range. That's why the blanks are not there for